Let's go to session two. Session two. This was a cool session because I feel like we got the opportunity, and honestly, we probably could have. I thought in my head at a certain point, I was like, I could probably go down a rabbit hole with you and we could talk for like 2-3 hours because I had so many questions. I mean, you think about in 32 years of life, you've lived so much life.
280,000 hours? You did that math, right?
That's how my mind works. I'm like, how many? Oh, this is crazy. And I've only spent this much, not even a percent. So I'm not even this math guy. It's just like something has clicked in my mind of I love thinking in days and hours and minutes, and it just motivates me, inspires me. So I think about that with you and how there's so much life that I've seen like not even a fraction. And it's really cool. And I wanted to ask more and more questions, and we'll just have to do a lunch for a meetup, right? But it gets me excited because that time a lot of things were kind of exposed, and even hearing some people give me feedback, they really appreciated that because I think there's a piece of, when you're doing coaching, there's like this, you just keep it really professional in a way of like, you're just trying to get the desired end, but you opening up your world a little bit more shows people that, that's part of coaching. Like you have to be transparent and vulnerable in the process, and that's what you did. And so that was really cool because that gave more context to why you chose the statements you chose for who you want to be. It helped people see that a little bit more. And I love that picture, along with talking a little bit more about deaf culture, that you're able to kind of like pair those things together. So what are your thoughts on session two?
It was, I won't think of like a cool vocabulary word because we know my capabilities come short on that front, but I talked about myself forever. And you don't have any moments in your life outside of this coaching session where you can talk the way I talk without being super pretentious or egotistical, but like we were searching to understand. And like the note I wrote in my notebook is like, find a friend, find somebody that genuinely cares about your personal growth and talk about yourself. Like we literally took all of these great adjectives, categorized them by different phases in my life, and you gave me a listening ear to remember what made me who I am. How often do people do that? More importantly, it was so powerful for me. And it's not easy to talk about those things, but in this setting and with someone like you that genuinely cares about you, and I don't know, like honestly, I've talked to you about how great of a listener you are, but the questions you ask, somebody that's genuinely curious in terms of helping you understand why you are the way you are in a positive way, and then how you can actually use that information to determine who you want to become. I loved it. And it was uncomfortable, but it was something that was so needed. And I do think the older you get, honestly, it doesn't matter if you've had a lot of successes or failures, but just talking about what made you the way you are, it's powerful stuff, man. Really powerful.
That's really good. So to be able, I'm curious if there's any thought, I'm sure someone's going to try this where they're, thinking about their life and separating adjectives that describe them in different stages of life. Was there anything in you doing that exercise that was enlightening for you?
Remembering, like you don't necessarily appreciate, and there's two layers to this. One is the awareness of your good adjectives. And then the other layer is why you developed those characteristics. And like to spend some time thinking about why or where bravery came from in my life, and to be able to talk in detail about this scary basement I had as a kid, like those types of reflections are things that you just don't do, and they're powerful. And I think even just opening that door, I remember leaving after session 2, and that whole week in between was very much a deeper thought around why I do certain things and why I am a certain way, but also in a very positive go forward way, because I was so laser focused on who I was becoming. Which that's the other part of this is I'm here because I know I can be better. I'm here now. I want to get here. This is the path. That wasn't clear before session 2.
Gosh, that's so awesome. One of my desires for everybody that I work with is that after sessions are over, their mind's still thinking about these things in a healthy way. And I think that's been the coolest thing, hearing from whether we're at the gym, whether in the sauna, like these things are really starting to like take root more and more and more in your life. And that's awesome.
And sometimes not so graceful. Like this morning, I think I was like, but why is the Murph going to be better for you based on this half Murph you did? But it is something like I love the practice. I love trying, and it comes out better in certain situations too. But I also just keep coming back to, and I'll give Kay credit for this, but it's like maybe not at all applicable to anything we're talking about right now, but like if you don't have anything nice to say, try harder. Like that to me is like the epitome of life right now for everybody. Just try a little harder. Think a little deeper.
So good, man. It's such a cool concept of how you are going through this process, and we're going through it fast, but still you're keeping up in a way mentally, and I think that's because of the way you crafted your who you want to be statements really shows me like, okay, this guy is serious about being this guy. And that's special, that's unique. They're not words on the paper, and the more you put time into it and think about it, it's only become deeper and deeper and deeper. We talked about this in the first session, but I want to kind of like just hit it again with deaf culture, because we really hit it in session 2. Is there anything that kind of connected light bulb moments that has helped you go through the rest of these sessions? Now, I recognize you talk about how you're thinking about it more and you're recognizing when you're in it, but was there anything in that picture of, okay, I noticed that there's insecurity here, or fixed mindset, or pessimistic, or, you know, I get to this place where I'm thinking about things that are out of my control and I'm staying stagnant? Like, are any of those things that are coming to light as you're going through your day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is probably something that, like, I think in the world of people, I probably have a tendency to be more focused on death culture. Not in a victim way, but in a let me tell you how hard I worked on something way. We talked a lot about that. But it kind of just loops back to like, and awareness still applies, but it's also just the honesty, right, with yourself. Because I do think to a large extent, the things that we see that are fixed in our lives are actually pretty movable, right? They're pretty dynamic, they're pretty fluid, but you have to believe, right? And you have to be honest with yourself about what's fixed and when you're being pessimistic. You know, I think there's so many situations where we can act with compassion, but our initial reaction is not that of compassion, right? It's that of frustration or impatience. Just go back. Just go back. Insecurity is so real too. I think that's the only one I haven't really mentioned. And I think you can look at this a number of different ways, but the only reason that you're insecure is because you're limiting your own self, right? I think that's extremely true, but you have to, again, be aware and honest about the insecurity, and even like the complete other side of the paradigm of like just belligerent ego, right? I think they're somewhat the same toxicity, but realizing it, being honest about it, and then taking action, special.
You know, one thing we haven't like talked about, but it's like been an undertone of this whole conversation, and you're alluding to right now, is just this honesty. Because when we talk about like a growth culture, to move from a growth culture to deaf culture, one, you have a leader, right? So in a way, you're leading in a lot of ways. And there's one way you can do it, which is telling everybody, hey, you need to have a more growth mindset, or you need to be more positive here, more present, or telling people what they need to do, which, you know, that doesn't really land right. But the other way is really recognizing that culture in yourself and allowing people to be impacted by that. I mean, that's like the first step to say, you know what, just gotta be real. Like, I have been more negative. I've seen my insecurities, and it's probably been impacting you. The way that hits them is totally different than just saying, hey, I think you need to change this.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've noticed that Kay continues to like you more and more. And like, jokes aside, and you're an amazing guy, but and she gets excited when I have Ike Day. Tuesday is Monday last week, but I come back different, you know, and it's just the constant hammering and reminding ourselves of growth culture. And I think I mentioned it right before this, where it's like, I'm going to go a little bit into death culture right now. Like, even that is something that, like, the people who are around me and I care most about can kind of brace themselves and know it's coming, but they also know that I'm conscious that this isn't something I want to live in or stay in. And right after, it's going to be a conversation about what we're going to control and do about it. But I think that's just that awareness, that honesty. And I do think, too, like, just these sessions in general, like, I've been brutally honest. And I think that in and of itself is a skill set that I've been continuing to work on. And I do love the cameras because I'm so accountable. I mean, everything I said, now you guys can all go fact check. And then when you meet me, hopefully we'll have less small talk and tons of real talk, right? But like, I love the idea of documenting this journey to also show how I'm working on these things. Like, that's something I think that's such an undertone of this entire series that I did find myself mentioning to somebody that I was trying to, like, I was sharing some of the content with him so that he can see if he really wants to get involved with this. But it's pretty amazing when you think about a 32-year-old growing. You know, like we talked about, you look at life, 280,000 hours. I'm now excited for the next 280,000, you know, like, versus looking back at the 280,000 and like, oh, I wish I could have done this, this, and this. Like, now I'm like, and I said it one episode too, like, I'm just excited for the next 100 years. It was actually episode 2.
I love it. So any final thoughts on this episode?
Spend some time and think about who you want to be. It's been the single most pivotal thing of our relationship. And there's a lot of, and I've learned this now after talking to you, there's a lot of other versions of this, but just sit down and think about the best version of yourself and who you want to be, and then let every single thing in your life revolve solely around that vision. Whether you manifest it every day, whether you chant mantras, whatever it is you do with that, spend some time and actually commit to a version of yourself that would make you the most bliss and just excited version of yourself that you could possibly be. It's the coolest thing ever. And it'll always change too. I got some new updates I'm gonna share with you after.
Love it. Let's go. That's awesome. Yeah.